What is up, everybody, and welcome to another video. In today's video, I am flipping my Impusa and really enjoying it. And yeah, I always forget how much I like this thing until I pick it up every once in a while and I start flipping it again. And I'm like, oh my god, this thing flips so good. The original Medusa is also a fantastic flipper, like a lot better than it looks, because I think I've talked about this before, but it looks super heavy when you look at it, but it's actually way more light and nimble than you would expect. But the Impusa, the Empress Medusa, is absolutely my favorite. In terms of both flipping and looks, I just think it looks incredible. The other thing too, though, with the Impusa is I made fun of the name a lot because I thought it was like a Dalen Machine-Wise type thing with like the Sliff T and the like when you start mashing his things together, you have like the Prisma and the Serif. You'd have the Slisma and stuff like that. So or the Serisma or all sorts of bad names like that. And so I thought the Impusa was like a bad name like that. No, the Impusa is absolutely just a thing. Impusa is like a Greek monster. That absolutely just exists and is a thing. I didn't know that. So yeah, my mistake. Sorry, Grant. This is actually a very good name, and I'm just stupid and didn't know. And it bit me because it knows that I'm stupid. And you know what? That's fair. Okay, so today's video. I'm sorry, I'm rambling about my Impusa now. That bit me, but today I just wanted to say thank you guys. Yesterday was the drop of the Vulp Pro, as I'm sure you're well aware, and I just want to say thank you all. We had a really great turnout for the first drop. We absolutely apparently need to make more of the black colorway options, because the black and red and then the black and gold Vulp Pros both sold out within like 4 minutes. We were not expecting that kind of a disparity there. There are still some units left of the orange and black, which are the ones that I have with me right here. I don't know if there are any teal left. Teal was a very popular color. There might be a few teal left, but orange and black are still left. But yeah, the gold and black and the red and black, oh my god, those vanished like almost immediately. So that was crazy. So yeah, thank you guys so much for that support. I'm really excited for people to get their Vulp Pros. I really hope you guys end up liking them, because I just think they're awesome, and I really think that you guys will enjoy them when they arrive. So I'm very interested into seeing what you guys think of it. And yeah, I don't know, I'm really excited about it. So yeah, that's the news with the Vulp Pro. The drop went extremely well. Thank you all seriously so much for the support. It means the world to me that people are interested in the stuff that I'm doing like this, because as I've talked about before, this is really what's going to kind of help us on our YouTube journey. It's hard to make money on YouTube. I've talked about this before, but it is hard to make money on YouTube. And I feel really blessed to be in this position where I can use my sort of my thoughts when it comes to being a reviewer. You know, I think this is very similar to in the hi-fi market, if you're at all aware of like the hi-fi market and headphones and IEMs, especially. There's a reviewer called Critical, who is a IEM reviewer that's been doing it a really long time, and he creates graphs specifically. So he was known for the longest time as being the graph guy. And what that means is that he would actually take IEMs and measure them empirically. Like, so he would hook them up to his measuring equipment and then measure them and like give you a readout of that measurement. And I thought that was really cool. And then he started doing YouTube, and it turns out he's a really funny guy that makes really great YouTube videos and is very entertaining, but also very much knows what he's talking about, which is important, obviously. And so that was really cool, getting to kind of like watch him grow as a content creator and go from someone who was doing just one type of thing as a blogger into a YouTuber. And then as he started doing the YouTube stuff, suddenly companies reached out to him, and he was able to collaborate with multiple companies and create new headphones based off of all of the data that he had gathered. And now those IEMs are some of the best and cheapest options you can get when it comes to getting into the IEM game. Like if you want to get in-ear monitors and you want them to be high quality and sound good, when you see his name on a product, you know that it will be good. And I think that's really cool and really important. And that's exactly what I want to do here. You know, I feel very blessed in this community, because when I started doing YouTube, you know, I didn't expect anything like this to happen. And now I have a massive collection of Balisongs and a lot of information on Balisongs. You know, I've been flipping Balisongs for such a long time now that I can pick up a Balisong and very quickly tell you things about it, either problems or things that I like, or even stuff when it comes to like the design language that most people actually don't pick up on. And what I mean by that is like literally people, I've had Lucas from Squid Industries and Dalen of MachineWise and Jerry Hom and others tell me, like, you know, I'll pick up one of their new Balisongs and say some things about it, and they'll be like, oh my God, that's feedback that like nobody has given me yet. That happened with the Kuno. I'm able to kind of like zero in on why it does certain things, or like, you know, how it does certain things. And that's simply because of my focus. You know, I'm a Balisong reviewer. And so over time, I've both grown my collection, but also narrowed my focus down to specifically reviewing, which means that the way that I flip, while it's not the prettiest flipping in the world, you know, I think I'm a pretty good flipper, and I think what I do can look very pretty, but the bulk of what I'm doing when I'm flipping is more based into my skills as a reviewer than it is actually trying to like flip and be the best flipper in the world. And so I have certain tricks and certain things that I do that are specifically ways that I am sort of testing the waters, as it were. And, you know, whenever I pick up a Balisong, my mind is instantly racing and figuring out, okay, well, what's the deal with this thing? Why is this way? You know, I really like the challenge of getting a Balisong and then flipping it for a while and feeling like maybe slightly weird about it, like what something is different about this Balisong and I don't know what it is. And then I flip it a bit longer and I do some weight measurements, and I take a look at the design and I think about it a lot, and eventually I can come up with an idea of like, oh, this might be the reason that this is this way. You know, that happened with the Cygnus, for instance. So if I go grab my Cygnus, the Cygnus is a great example of this. When I first flipped it, I was like, oh, this is one of the best Balisongs I've ever flipped. And then I spent a little bit longer on it, and I was like, okay, maybe it's not actually one of the best Balisongs I've ever flipped, because the longer I spend on it, the more, you know, as soon as that like novelty factor wore off, I still really like it, but I was more weirded out by it, and I was like, why am I weirded out by the way this flips? And then I realized that, you know, the reason that I'm weirded out by it is because of the weight distribution, because they've replaced so much of this titanium with G10 and the places that they've done it. So they've got a weird concentration of weight right here at the pivot area, but it's like behind the pivot area, not even at the pivot area. And then you've got this long space where they've removed a ton of titanium. So there's a huge well of basically no weight in the middle. And they even milled out a ton of the titanium from the inside there. And then finally you get back to this spacer where it's basically a block titanium spacer and then two pieces of stainless steel hardware jammed in there. I suddenly realized, like, the reason that I feel like this feels weird when doing fans and trying to like change its direction, the reason that it kind of resists is because of that moment of inertia being pushed all the way out there. You know, it's a really innovative design, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a very, very good flipper. It is a great flipper, but it's also not nearly as good of a flipper as I thought it was when I first started. And I think that that's a really interesting process, right? Is like, you know, going through and playing with Balisongs and being like, oh, what is making this flip the way it is and stuff like that. And so I feel like over time I've been able to sort of get a view on Balisongs that not many people really have. As a reviewer, it's meant that I'm able to sort of intuit and maybe, I don't know if research is the right word, but I can sort of like take time and understand why a Balisong is a certain way or whatever more easily, and I have more of a like official method to do so, and come up with what I would consider to be more empirical judgments than just Balisong flipping is extremely, extremely subjective. Every person is going to have different opinions when it comes to it, and so what I've been trying to do as a reviewer over how many years I've been doing this now, which is crazy to think about, it comes down to I'm trying to find a way to be as empirical as possible in my judgments. Like when I'm talking about a Balisong, I want to make sure that the things that I'm talking about, if I have problems with it, I'm either being very clear that that is my opinion and, your mileage may vary, or I'm talking about something that genuinely affects the core functionality of the Balisong, regardless of your opinions on Balisongs. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's just really cool. And then that leads me to why it's really cool that I then have the opportunity to create shit like the Vulp Pro. The Vulp Pro is a great example, and the Vulp itself are both, they feel very similar to what Critical has done in the headphone game, where it's like I'm taking all of my knowledge as to what makes a Balisong good, and I'm applying that to a specific problem that I see in the Balisong community. For the Vulp, obviously, that problem was there's not a good, reliable entry-level trainer, right? There's not something that just immediately, when somebody joins the Balisong community, there's not a thing that currently existed at the time where somebody joins the Balisong community and goes to Reddit and is like, hey, I'm new here. What Balisong should I get? Like, originally there was no thing that was the go-to option. And I was like, that needs to exist because for the community to be healthy long term, I think that is very important to exist. And so similarly, the reason for the Vulp Pro's existence is almost the same. When it comes to this, currently, if you get a Vulp, the next step up in terms of price is something like the Crackerakin, in terms of price and quality. And the Crackerakin is still one of the best Balisongs ever made. To this day, almost nothing actually competes with it when it comes to pure, unbridled flipping performance. Like, this thing is just utter madness. But it's also relatively expensive compared to the Vulp. This is a jump from something in the sub $100 range to something in the sub $300 to above $300 range. You're jumping a fair bit when it comes to the amount of money you're spending. And so what I wanted to do with the Vulp Pro was create something in between, something that has the performance that you're looking for, as a flipper. As soon as you've graduated from the Vulp, I wanted something that would make both beginner flippers who had a Vulp and really want to step their game up, but also flippers who are currently very good and want something to train with that will match their abilities. I wanted something in the $150 price range that would basically allow you to have that step up without breaking the bank. And I talked about competitiveness before, but I think it's important to talk about what I meant by that, because somebody commented on my last video and said, well, originally the point of the Vulp Pro was to defeat clones and also to provide an entry-level thing, and now this is to compete with the competition. And when I say competitive, that's not actually what I mean. You see, the Balisong community is an interesting one, and there are economics to this. There are, when it comes to a Balisong, if you have a buyer and they can have one Balisong, they are going to be making a choice. They're going to be making a choice between, say, a Vulp Pro and a Crackerakin. But with the Balisong community at large and what makes the Balisong hobby special, you know, I think this is similar to, like, there's a reason that I am into the keyboard hobby. You guys have seen my keyboard before. I'm into keyboards, I'm into headphones, and I'm into Balisongs. Those are my three main things I'm into. I'm also into fountain pens to some degree. I really love fountain pens, but that should be unsurprising to most of you. But keyboards are a good example of a hobby that sort of has a limit, which is that once you've built one keyboard for your primary computer, there's not really a reason to keep building keyboards. Some people do. Some people have collections of keyboards, but generally, the people who make up the bulk, you know, like 90% of the keyboard hobby, the people that exist in there, they have a keyboard. For me, the way that I went about building other keyboards, and I think a lot of people in the keyboard hobby end up doing this, the way that I wanted to make more keyboards, but I didn't have, you know, I only need one keyboard. So what ended up happening is I made keyboards for my friends, which was really nice. You know, I was able to just be like, hey friends, you guys look like you could use a nicer keyboard, and this would be a really nice thing that we could do together. So first of all, it's a, you know, it's like a, I want to say team building exercise, but it's just a thing that we can do together as friends. You know, I can like come over and help you build your very own keyboard, which is really cool. It's a cool experience for my friend, and it's a cool bonding experience for me and my friends. So like it's a really nice like win-win situation. Whereas, but still, that means that that's their keyboard. You know, I'm not keeping that keyboard. And then when it comes to headphones, it's a similar journey. For me, you know, for some people, they start out in the low end of headphones, and I guess I did that too. You know, I started buying lower tier headphones and stuff like that, and I really enjoyed that. And then eventually I got to where I am today, which is I have my IEMs, so like, let's grab these. My IEMs alone, these are the Empire Ears Valkyries, okay? The Empire Ears Valkyrie, this is like a $1,700 headphone, okay? These two tiny things that are custom fit to my ears, they cost like $1,700 freaking dollars. They are my only pair of IEMs. I don't have a different pair of IEMs. And the reason for that is because I don't need another pair of IEMs. I have like the best that I could buy. Similarly, my Hi-Fi Men headphones, those things cost me like $1,700 or $1,800, and those also, I don't need to buy anything else. And then I also have my KOS my KOS 95Xs. Those are also like, now I have an electrostatic headphone, I have a planar magnetic headphone, and I have IEMs. And between those things, I've covered almost all of my bases when it comes to like different sounds. So my collection, when it comes to that stuff, is smaller. You know, people have collections of headphones, but once again, I think that most of the headphone hobby has like 3 or 4 headphones at the highest end. 3 or 4 headphones per person. And then you get into the people who are like real collectors, and they have tons of headphones. But generally speaking, 90% of the people that actually participate in the hobby only have 3 or 4 things. This is where the Balisong hobby is different, and I think it's important to realize that. The people that are getting into the Balisong hobby at the beginning, sure, they have only 1 or 2 Balisongs, but very rapidly you get more. And the reason for that isn't because you desire more necessarily. Like, the reason that you increase your collection size isn't because you want more Balisongs. It's actually because the functionality, the flipping experience is genuinely different. Like, when it comes to keyboards, once you've built your perfect keyboard, that's kind of just your perfect keyboard. You don't need another keyboard that feels different. Like some people like linears for typing and then tactile switches for gaming, and or vice versa. You like tactile switches for typing and linear switches for gaming. So sure, maybe you have 2 keyboards, one for each purpose. That feels like a lot because you'd have to go through the process of like either plugging them in and turning them off and stuff or whatever, but you know, you can do that. And like that's why I have 3 pairs of headphones that I switch between, because each one has a slightly different sound signature. So that is the main reason for collecting. But with Balisongs, it's even different. All of them flip slightly differently, and because of that, they're both interesting to people, but also exciting to people. Like, there is a reason, if you have something like the Impusa, right? This is a very expensive Balisong. I have some really incredible Grail-level Balisongs. I have a Palatheus Ronin. I have a Invictus. Like, I have some insane Balisongs. I have a Pro Flipper. I have 2 Tsunamis. I have an Alien by Stitch Steel. And I have a Talisong, which is still, to this day, one of my favorite freaking Balisongs ever made. And what's wild is that even with all of these incredible Balisongs, unlike all of my other hobbies that I exist within, I don't feel like I've reached satisfaction. Instead, I have, this incredible, very expensive Balisong, but I just flip it sometimes, because sometimes I want the feeling of this Balisong, but other days I want the feeling of my EPS Wraith. And other days, I want to go back to the comfort and the insane flippability of the Crackerakin. What I'm trying to say here is that the only limitation when it comes to a participation in the Balisong hobby is monetary. The limitation is how much money are you actually able to invest in the hobby. When it comes to the want to participate in the hobby, it's very different than other hobbies. Other hobbies sort of have a peak. Like with headphones, you can go straight for the top. You can go ahead and buy a $1,500 to $3,000 pair of headphones and then be good for the rest of your life. You only need to participate monetarily once, and then you're like, good. You've got the best pair of headphones, and maybe you'll go listen at a headphone bar locally, or you'll go to your friend's house who also has a different pair of headphones, and you'll go listen to some other headphones. But generally speaking, you'll be very satisfied with this one pair of headphones you've bought. Whereas in the Balisong hobby, the point isn't just to get the best possible flipper. Like, you can buy one knife and it's the best possible flipper, but generally speaking, people in the Balisong hobby aren't satisfied with that, because that isn't the point. It's not about finding the best possible flipper. It's about flipping in general. It's about the activity, not the products themselves. The products themselves are an extension of the activity. And that's why I think they last so long, right? In the headphone hobby, the activity is listening to music, but the focus of the headphone hobby is on the headphones. Similarly, with keyboards, it's like with the keyboard hobby, the focus is on the keyboards. How do they sound? How do they look? That kind of thing. In the Balisong hobby, we love our Balisongs, but that also isn't the focus. The focus is flipping. The question always is, how does it flip? How does it feel to flip? How is it different than other things to flip? The point is the art. The activity itself is the core of the Balisong hobby, which is why, and this is where I'm kind of getting back to my point, anybody who gets into the Balisong hobby over a long enough timeline, they are much more likely to participate monetarily in a bunch of different things from a bunch of different companies, instead of staying stagnant and having just one Balisong. That's where we're different than other hobbies. Other hobbies have people who participate, and they participate on the minimum level, or they, go in really big and buy the best thing right at the beginning. But once you've gone all the way up that upgrade ladder, there's nowhere else to go. You're just at the top now. Merry Christmas, you've done it. Now you've won where do you go? Whereas in the Balisong hobby, buying the best Balisong doesn't make you a better flipper. In the headphone hobby, buying the best headphone means you have the best headphone. Buying the best keyboard means you have the best keyboard. But buying the best Balisong doesn't mean you'll be able to use it very well. And that's exactly what I mean. The activity of the hobby, the thing that makes the hobby fun, is disconnected from the products themselves. The products can aid with it, like there are different ways that products can be better or worse for the activity you're trying to do. But the core idea of the products themselves is disconnected from the idea of the hobby. Okay. So what point am I trying to make here? Well, the point that I'm trying to get to is that because of this, because the hobby is disconnected from the products, that means that a product like the Vulp Pro actually isn't competing that badly with a product like the Crackerakin. Because even though they exist in a very similar class, and this is something funny that I've heard a million times. People will call one knife a blank killer. So, the BRS Replicant. Over and over again, people have said this knife is the Replicant killer. So, the EPS Wraith especially is the most recent example of, this is the Replicant killer. This is going to kill the Replicant. And it's like, no, it's not. Because people aren't going, do I get an EPS Wraith or a Replicant? Most people who actually participate in the hobby are like, ooh, man, I have a Replicant, and now I want a Wraith. I want to see what the difference is. They want both. That's the thing. People in this hobby want both. It's not the choice of, do I get the Vulp Pro or the Crackerakin? It's, ooh, the Vulp Pro is within my price range now. I'm a younger person, or I have less money in general, and so I don't have the ability to buy a Crackerakin. So I'm going to get a Vulp Pro. And then you get the Vulp Pro and you flip it for a while and you're like, oh man, this thing rocks. I really like it. But man, people talk a lot about the Crackerakin. I wonder how it's different. I wonder if I would still like the Crackerakin. And then you think about that for a bit, and then once you have enough money, once time has passed and you've been satiated with your Vulp Pro for a while, then you're like, oh man, there's a new Crackerakin drop coming up and they have a color that I like. I'm going to grab a Crackerakin because I haven't gotten to flip one yet. Or I flipped my friend's Crackerakin at Blade Show or whatever, and it was a really great time. So now I'm going to get that. And then boom, look at that. Now you have 2 Balisongs in your collection. That's what I'm talking about. People aren't getting into this just to go straight for the last thing you're ever going to buy, because that's not how this hobby works. It's also, unfortunately, why this hobby can be very dangerous for your wallet, so I get that. However, I think there's something really beautiful about a hobby like this where the point isn't to get the best thing, right? Balisong is not pay to win. Does that make sense? I think that's a really good way of putting it. Balisong is not pay to win. Some of the best flippers are people in Korea who only have access to cheap China crap Balisongs. There are some of the best flippers you have ever seen, and the only Balisongs they have access to are those cheap, shitty, full stainless steel ones that you get on Amazon. And I've seen someone from Korea do, I think, something to the neighborhood of 10 scissors in a row on a cheap Chinese Balisong. And I can't even do a double scissor. Look at that. I can't even do one double scissor. And this person could do 10 double scissors in a row on just cheap China crap. What I'm saying is, the Balisong that you own does not dictate your skill level. There is no buy this Balisong and get better at flipping. Instead, the point of buying the Balisong is simply buying the new experience and or the new look. You're looking for a Balisong that either gives you a new experience or you're buying a Balisong because you think it looks really pretty. The actual flipping aspect is all on you. That's what makes skill toys especially such a cool hobby. You know, it's not about the buying your way in and going straight for the top. Like if you jumped into the Balisong hobby as a newbie and then you bought something like a Palatheus Ronin as your first Balisong, you would hate it. This thing doesn't even flip that good. It's weird, it's super handle heavy, it's got a very strange balance and bias, and it's really chunky. This is not the best flipper because it's not pay to win. There is no pay-to-win functionality in the Balisong community. Instead, it's work to win. You know, this is something that I've actually had on my mind for a while, and I think I've talked about it in previous videos, but I wanna talk about something real quick here, which is that I don't believe in the term talent. People say talent all the time. You know, I'm going to get my Omeme. Yeah, the Omeme is a good example of another completely different Balisong from all the others. People say, oh, that person is very talented. I don't believe in that word, and I'm going to tell you why right now. Talent and skill are different things. Talent is simply smaller stuff like how good is your hand-eye coordination? You know, were you born with the ability to have high hand-eye coordination? You know, is your ability to understand the space around your body better, and is that activity easier for you than it is for other people generally? You know, that's a very base level. Oh, this is the Balisong hobby. You know, like you might be slightly better at understanding space. Jesus, I can't talk right now. Sorry. But just because of that doesn't mean you're inherently better at Balisong than anyone else. Here's the thing, people aren't talented with Balisongs, people are skilled, and this is true with almost anything. Gymnasts aren't talented, gymnasts are skilled. They learned to do the things that they're doing. They practiced and practiced. Do you want to know why children are good at Balisongs? It's not because the children themselves are talented or that you know, anything like that. The reason children are good with Balisongs is twofold. First of all, their brains are more plastic. They're more able to increase their hand-eye coordination through repetitive tasks. Children's brains are better at absorbing information and changing their brain structure to match said information. So you can teach a child a language much easier than you can teach an adult a language. And similarly, Balisong flipping is a language. It's just with your hands. You can also teach a child sign language much easier than you can teach an adult sign language. It's just the plasticity of their brain. And then, on top of that, the other half of it is children have a lot of free time. Children are just going to school. They're not working their job. They're not having to pay the rent. They're not having to do all of this stuff that's like super important. Instead, children can exist, you know. They just hang out, and then if they get a Balisong, they're gonna flip it a bunch. That's why children are fantastic flippers a lot of the time. Some of the best flippers can be surprisingly young, and it's not because they're talented, it's because they have time and their brains are plastic. And that flipping ability that they learn is skill. It's not talent. It's the same thing across all of this. All of the people who are the best flippers, they're not talented, they're skilled. It is a skill that anyone can learn and anyone can get better at. And some people have an easier time than others for unrelated reasons. But generally speaking, everything is skill, not talent. So yeah. Anyways, that's my really long rant about what is the Balisong community, and specifically how the Balisong community is not a pay-to-win structure. There's not, like, the competition that exists between knives isn't the same as other hobbies. In the grand scheme of things, Balisongs don't actually compete with each other that much. There is a something to be said about the idea that, yeah, like, if the Vulp Pro cuts into Crack-A-Rackin' sales somewhat, that would make sense, especially at the beginning. The people are going to be buying the Vulp Pro, and maybe that means they have less money to buy a Crack-A-Rackin'. However, the people that buy the Vulp Pro are the same people who are going to be interested in buying a Crack-A-Rackin', and vice versa. A lot of people who bought the Vulp Pro probably already own a Crack-A-Rackin'. It's not a competition. Instead, it's about everything. The Balisong community is diverse because it supports diversity. The diversity is the point. The point is not getting the best singular thing that performs the best out of anything. The point is the diversity. That's what's so cool about the Balisong hobby. So, yeah, I hope you guys learned something from this video. This was a very passionate rant from me, but I really wanted to talk about this because I think it's a really, really cool thing. And it's one of the things that gets me excited about the Balisong community in general. And one of the reasons that I believe that it has the stay around, or the power to stick around a lot longer than people think. So, yeah, anyways, this has been my little rant about the Balisong hobby. Balisongs are not pay to win. Now you know. Merry Christmas. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Peace.